Everything big. Oh, you fancy, huh?
Girls, let me see your hands. Wave them at them bitches hating on you with their friends. Girl, you got it.
Hey everyone, and I want to tell a ghost story, and this story is freaking really 100% true, and I mean I've honestly, personally, when I experienced this, I don't know, these spirits or whatever you want to call them, when I seen them, I wasn't afraid. It was actually very exciting to see, these spirits, and, I don't know, I wasn't scared, and I seen them like how I see a live person, that's how real they were to me, and I saw about 6 of them, and it's weird, it's funny how I seen them because, I was actually having sex at the time when I seen these spirits, so, if you're interested in hearing that story, then, stick around, because it's pretty interesting, very, very interesting, so, yeah, I'm just gonna go right into it, so. This was the year 2016, I believe, and, I was living in Oklahoma City. Me and my 4 daughters, we were living in Oklahoma City with their dad. I was with their dad at the time, and, we were living in a 2-bedroom house, and we were only paying like $700 a month for a 2-bedroom house. The only thing about the house, it just didn't have a basement for us to go to whenever a tornado came. So we had to basically run for our lives, But we were staying in this house. It was a 2-bedroom house. And me and my man, when I seen these spirits, it was while I was having sex. Now, I don't know if anyone else has ever had that experience, but I always had, I always would see spirits while I'm getting fucked. I don't know why. I have no clue why they would show themselves at that moment or around that time, but they do, And, we were actually kind of doing it doggy style, but we were laying down on our side. And, we had this big, huge flat screen TV. It was huge, and it was big enough to where I saw. Yeah, so I'm laying there, and all of a sudden I see these 4 figures forming around our bed. And I'm laying there, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, what is that? Because they formed so quickly, and I was tripping because I noticed that every one of them had their own unique, detailed look to themselves. Like I saw their face expression, I saw, every detail on their clothing, like I just seen how they looked, And I'm thinking to myself, okay, my brain is really, really talented, because I thought, wow, I can't believe that my brain or whatever is like forming these figures in front of me and giving them each their own unique style of look, I was just really impressed by my mind and like what my mind was doing to me. And I'm looking at these figures, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, and I'm looking away, I'm like, getting into it with my man or whatever, and he has no clue what I'm seeing, okay? And I'm looking, and every time I look back at them, they were still there, And the only reason why so I'm tripping out, I'm seeing these figures, and I'm thinking to myself, I'm like, okay, these cannot, at first I'm like, okay, my brain is like really talented, and I'm impressed that, it's, creating these people in front of me, And I thought to myself, okay, either my brain is really, creating these people, or these people are spirits, you know? So I thought to myself, I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm not even going to look at the TV. I'm not even going to look in that direction. If it's fake, I told myself, if it's fake, and I look back, then they'll be gone, you know? So I took, I started getting into it with my man or whatever. And like all of a sudden, I just, like, maybe I would say maybe about 20 minutes, I looked back again and they were still there. And I'm thinking like, okay, and when me and my man, when we would do it, he wasn't a minute man, so, you know, we were, still on our side and everything. And one thing I noticed about one of the spirits was that he was looking at me and he was going like this, like saying no, 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 and he kept doing that over and over. So he's standing there and he's going no, 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 and I was just like, why is that one doing that? Like saying no, no, no. And one was a little girl. She was like in a pink dress. She had long hair. She was in a pink dress. That one that was saying no, 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 he was like a punker, like a skater type, because he was wearing clothes like nowadays, like how, young teenage boys dress, with the skinny jeans and, with the bracelets with the spikes, and, and he had kind of like long hair, and he had like his hair like in his face, He was, I would say he was one of those, God, what are they called? They're kind of like punker, like a goth, but like punker at the same time, He was wearing tight jeans, he was wearing skinny jeans, and he was wearing a white t-shirt. And he kept going, no, no, no. And I noticed that they were kids because I couldn't see their face. Their face was dark, like it was black. But I saw their clothing and shit. The other two, one was an old man. He had the saddest look on his face that I've ever seen in my life. It looked like he was gonna cry. And then the other one was bald. Yeah, so the old man, his clothing looked more like from the 1800s, because he just looked like he was a cowboy without his hat, and he had the saddest look on his face. It looked like he was gonna start like crying, like he just had the saddest look on his face, and he was looking down at the floor. The other man, and he looked like he was in his late 30s or 20s, and he was wearing blue jeans, and he had no shirt on, and he was actually on our bed, and he was kneeling down, and he was like this, like he was like in deep thought, like he was thinking about something. He wasn't even paying attention to us. The old man or him, they both were not looking at us. They weren't even paying attention to us, but the two other ones were. And I started figuring out why the teenage boy kept going like this to me, like saying no, 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 because I was having sex. We were having sex. And, yeah, so they were the only two that were paying attention to us. And I was just looking, I wasn't scared or anything. I just kept staring at them, and I was just like, wow, I was just amazed at them. Like, they were spirits. Yeah, so I ended up, we ended up changing positions, okay? And when we did, I saw two more spirits. And these two spirits, they were a little creepy, okay? And more creepier than the four spirits that were around our bed, okay? These ones were active, very active. While we were changing positions, I seen this woman crawling. Okay? And, she was actually crawling on our bed with us. I seen her so quickly that, when my ex, when he went in front of her, she was gone, And I was kind of looking around him like, what the fuck, you know, like, and for a second he was kind of like, what is it, you know, and I'm like, oh, nothing, you know. So, you know, he ended up, you know, I was on my back, he was on top of me or whatever. And when I seen this woman, she kind of like, when she noticed that I seen her, she was crawling on her bed, and she stopped and she looked at me and she smiled, like she was like, you know. And when she did that, that's when he went in front of her and she was gone, you know. And I thought to myself, I'm like, and it was kind of like, the fuck, you know. And I was like looking around him and shit, you know. And so, well, when that happened, there was other time when he actually saw her too, but he didn't see her. He saw like a black shadow, because there was another time we were getting ready for bed to watch a movie. We were going to watch a movie before we were going to go to bed, and all of a sudden he goes, "What the fuck was that?" And he jumped up off of the bed and he turned the lights on and he's looking around our bed, and I'm thinking, I'm like, what is it? You know, I'm like, what? And he was like, I don't know. He was like, I saw a black shadow like go in the bed with us. And I'm like, what? You know. And I thought to myself, and I thought about that time with that woman, you know, when we were having, you know. And I'm thinking, I'm like, oh, you did? And he was like, yeah. He was all looking around, and, you know, and then, yeah, well, that was that time, and I knew who it was already. So yeah, it was her. And so she's crawling on her bed, and she looks at me and smiles, and I'm thinking, I'm like, oh shit, you know. And she was also from the 1800s because of what she was wearing. She was wearing a brown, ugly dress. Like, it was ugly. It was something that I wouldn't wear. But it was a dress, and she was pretty, actually. She was not ugly. Yes. She got on the bed with us or whatever, and all of a sudden, you know, I'm just not paying attention to the spirits, you know. I'm like into it with him and shit. And then all of a sudden, I'm looking at him, and I saw an old man. Like, I saw his face changing, like it like I kind of seen, like, I just seen something in him, like, I don't know, I can't explain it, and it was an old man, like, because I started seeing, like, wrinkles forming, like, around his eyelids and shit, you know. And all of a sudden, his sweat, because, you know, it was getting really hot and sweaty or whatever, well, his sweat started looking like blood. Like, it just looked like he was drenched in blood. Like like somebody poured blood all over him, you know. And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking, like, oh my god, I'm like, what the fuck, you know. This is like what I was thinking and feeling inside, you know. It wasn't what I was showing on the outside, it was what I was feeling on the inside. When I was looking at him, he was covered in blood, and I'm just looking at him like, what the fuck, you know? And I'm like touching his chest, and, you know, the blood, him being covered in blood, that kind of freaked me out. That freaked me out a lot, to where I was kind of like getting a little scared, because at first I wasn't getting scared, you know, with seeing all these spirits and shit. I was actually amazed and excited, you know. But once I seen the blood, and once I looked into his eyes and saw what I saw, I started getting a little freaked out, a little creeped out, you know. And so I'm touching his chest, and I'm looking at my hands, and there's blood on my hands, and, you know, so I couldn't take it anymore, and I kind of like grabbed him, kind of hugged him, and I'm thinking to myself, like, what am I seeing, you know? And so I kind of shook it off. I'm like thinking, okay, this is not real. This isn't real. You know, I kept telling myself, this is not real, you know? And so, like, I kind of like laid back a little bit, and I'm looking at him, and all of a sudden, I see this hair floating in front of me. This long brown hair. I mean, this hair was long. And the way it was floating in the air, it was like floating, like, you know, really slowly, like in front of me. And I'm thinking, I'm looking at it, and I'm like, is that hair? and I'm just looking at it, right, and it's coming through his neck, you know, and I'm tripping. So I'm laying there, and I'm seeing this hair coming out of his neck, and he kind of looked like one of those birds that like to fly in the desert and like eats the the roadkill or whatever. They're the ones that have like the feathers coming out and they're like bald. Kind of look like one of those, but a human one. And so I'm looking and I'm concentrating on his neck because that's where the hair's coming out of, and all of a sudden I see a female face. Like I seen like this part of her face, like her eye, and she kind of like peeks out at me through his neck, okay? And I kind of like go back like that, and I'm like, what the fuck? I'm like, what was that, And I'm thinking, I'm like, what? Like, okay, and I'm looking again, and she does it again, and I'm like, oh, hell no. And like, this bitch is on his back, so all of a sudden I kind of move a little bit, because I'm kind of like a little uncomfortable at what I'm seeing. So like, I kind of like force him to move too, so he ends up like getting up off of me, and he kind of like picks my legs up, right? And he's, humping away and shit, and like, while he's doing that, all of a sudden, so, I mean, he sat up or whatever, and all of a sudden, I see these two white pale hands slowly go around her neck, like she was like slowly going like this, right? And I'm thinking like, oh my god, I knew off the bat what the fuck I was looking at, and the way he was like humping and like the way he was making his faces, like it looked like he was getting choked. Like looked like he was going, and I'm thinking, I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, this ghost is choking and killing my man in front of me. I kept thinking to myself, I'm like, oh my god, she's fucking choking him, she's killing him. And so again, I closed my eyes and I thought to myself, I'm like, you know what, no, this is fake, this is not real, So I couldn't see anymore after that, and I just kept my eyes closed the entire time after that until we were done. And when we were done, that's when I told him everything that I seen, And while I was explaining that to him, the light started flickering in our bedroom. And that's when I knew that our house was haunted. But yeah, so when I seen that female spirit choking my man, I thought, first thing that came into my head was, okay, this spirit does not like men, she does not like men, she does not like my man, because she is trying to kill him, or wants to kill him. And that was, that kind of, stayed stuck with me, because, I mean, she made it very clear that she did not like him, and around that time he was being very mean and treating me very mean. So one day his brother and his wife was living with us, and his wife came up to me and was like, I need to talk to you. And I'm like, okay. So she, we sat to the side, and she was like, your daughter has been telling me stories that there's a spirit here by the name of Sophia who she said murdered or killed her husband, and I'm thinking, I'm like, fuck, are you serious, and what came to me right away was that spirit that I seen choking my man. And she goes, I'll get holy water and we can pray in here, When I told him about what I experienced that day when we were having sex or whatever, he didn't believe me. He did not believe me at all until, like, he started experiencing things after that, like, for instance, like, the female, one day his brother said that, we were hanging out, and his brother just was like, oh, you know what? He goes, man, he goes, I had a hard time sleeping last night. He was like, and I had a weird dream about this woman that was like floating over me, and like floating on top of me or whatever, he said. And he said that that when the way she looked to him was like a witch. And I already knew off the bat who it was. I knew that it was that lady, Sophia or whatever. And I kind of told him, I go, yeah, I know what you're talking about. I go, that happened, you know, I know who you're talking about. And you know, my man that looked at me was like, how do you know? And I'm like, well, because I told you about her. You know, I was like, she was the one that I saw choking you. And he was like, oh yeah, you know. And there was another time too, when about him covered in blood, he actually had a nightmare that you know, there was a man in our living room that was covered in blood that attacked him like an animal. You know, he woke up scared, wanted me to hug him and shit. You know, yeah. So after that, you know, everything just went downhill after that. He ended up losing his job. You know, we couldn't pay the rent, and we had to move out. You know, but living in that house, it was just the worst time in my entire life, because my ex was very mean. He treated me very mean. He was probably the meanest he's ever been in our entire relationship. And our relationship just completely changed after that. It was not the same at all. You know, and, yeah, you know, we ended up, when we moved out of there, I was relieved, I was happy, you know, and, after that, we ended up moving back to California, and, you know, I kind of just, like, let him go. I didn't want to be with him anymore, you know, and, we still haven't been, we're still broken up, you know, we haven't been together, and it's already been, like, almost 10 years, you know, and, but yeah, I mean, that house changed a lot of my life after what I experienced after that. It just, you know, it's something I'll never forget. And these spirits, I mean, you know, there was some that were good and some that were bad in that house, you know, and it just wasn't one, there was quite a few of them, and just my whole entire life changed after that, completely.